U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham wants Ukraine's minerals. They're sitting on trillions of dollars worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. They're sitting on 10 to 122 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. A prominent U.S. politician has repeatedly said the quiet part loud, arguing that the United States and the West must continue supporting Ukraine, sending it more and more weapons in a proxy war against Russia. Because it has trillions of dollars of minerals that Western countries want to get access to, including some strategic minerals that are needed for advanced technologies. This has been argued by the U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham from the Republican Party. He is a notorious war hawk, and he has taken repeated trips to Ukraine. During his latest trip in September, the U.S. Senator published a video standing next to Ukraine's Western-backed leader, Vladimir Zelensky. And in this video clip he said very clearly, we must continue supporting Ukraine in no small part due to the fact that it has trillions of dollars of minerals. I'm here with President Zelensky. I am such an admirer of what you and your country have done. You're trying to stop the Russians, so we don't have to fight them. They don't want any American troops. They just need the weapons to free their country of a terrible invasion. They're sitting on trillions of dollars worth of minerals that could be good to our economy. So I want to keep helping our friends in Ukraine. We can win this. They need our help. Yes, we need, and we have already, the biggest help is the support of the American people and the support of our friends. Thanks to Lindsey and his colleagues, to congressmen and senators from the United States. Thanks for the support, bipartisan support. Thank you so much. Peace is coming. Yes. Soon note how Lindsey Graham also argued that the West had to support Ukraine in order to fight Russia, so the West doesn't have to fight Russia on its own territory. This is an example of what people have said is the strategy of fighting Russia to the last Ukrainian. Now this is not the first time that Lindsey Graham has publicly salivated over the trillions of dollars of minerals in Ukraine. The U.S. Senator made very similar comments in June in an interview on CBS. He referred to Ukraine as a gold mine. He argued that the West cannot afford to allow those minerals to fall into the hands of the evil Russians and China. He said that Ukraine could be the best business partner that the West has ever dreamed of. What did Trump do to get the weapons flowing? He created a loan system. They're sitting on $10 to $12 trillion of critical minerals in Ukraine. They could be the richest country in all of Europe. I don't want to give that money and those assets to Putin to share with China. If we help Ukraine now, they can become the best business partner we ever dreamed of. That $10 to $12 trillion of critical mineral assets could be used by Ukraine and the West, not given to Putin and China. This is a very big deal, how Ukraine ends. Let's help them win a war we can't afford to lose. Let's find a solution to this war, but they're sitting on a gold mine. To give Putin $10 or $12 trillion of critical minerals that he will share with China is ridiculous. When you see people in the West argue that NATO has to keep sending billions and billions of dollars of weapons to Ukraine in order to defend democracy and human rights, you should never forget those clips that we just saw there. They are very revealing about the ulterior motives of Western countries in Ukraine. Ukraine has tens of trillions of dollars worth of natural resources. Now, even some mainstream US media outlets have reported on this. The Washington Post in fact referred to the war in Ukraine as a battle for the nation's mineral and energy wealth. In this report back in 2022, the Washington Post noted, quote, Ukraine harbors some of the world's largest reserves of titanium and iron ore, fields of untapped lithium, and massive deposits of coal. Collectively, they are worth tens of trillions of dollars, end quote. The Washington Post noted that in addition to having oil and coal and natural gas, Ukraine also has rare earth minerals. This article noted that these include, quote, significant amounts of other valuable energy and mineral deposits used for everything from aircraft parts to smartphones, end quote. And it also added that these rare earth minerals that are located in Ukraine are, quote, essential for certain high-tech components that could hamper Western Europe's search for alternatives to imports from Russia and China, end quote. China and critical minerals supply chain. This point is absolutely crucial. The US and Europe have been trying to seek alternative producers of some of these critical minerals because the reality is that China is a huge part of the global supply chain. And the US energy chief said that the US government is very concerned. China is responsible for approximately 60% of the entire world's production of rare earth minerals. And the US Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said, quote, "It's one of the pieces of the supply chain that we're very concerned about in the United States. We do not want to be over-reliant on countries whose values we may not share," end quote. In fact, in 2022, the Joe Biden White House announced a new initiative to try to diversify the US critical mineral supply chain for rare earth elements especially, and lithium and cobalt. These are minerals that are needed for clean energy technologies like batteries, electric vehicles, wind turbines, solar panels, and more. And the Biden administration has not only put tariffs on Chinese products and Chinese minerals, and put export restrictions and sanctions on China. But furthermore, the Biden administration is investing hundreds of billions of dollars in its own domestic capacities for production to try to weaken China. USA wants Ukraine to replace China in mineral supply chain. And can you guess which country has been extremely important in Washington's attempt to weaken China and Russia and their influence in the global supply chain for critical minerals? You guessed it, Ukraine. In 2021, the official code of law of the United States was updated and included a new section titled Cooperation between the United States and Ukraine regarding the titanium industry. And, this is written into the letter of U.S. law. It states, quote, "It is the policy of the United States to engage with the government of Ukraine on cooperation in the titanium industry as a potential alternative to Chinese and Russian sources on which the United States and Europe currently depend." Wall Street is buying up Ukraine. Of course, it's also corporations from the United States and other Western countries that are profiting from this. Here at Geopolitical Economy Report, we've done extensive reporting on how Western governments have been imposing neoliberal economic policies on Ukraine, including mass privatization, selling off state-owned assets, and selling off natural resources to foreign companies. And at the same time, Ukraine has been viciously repressing its own workers, cutting workers' rights, basically making it illegal to form a union. In the description below, I will link to some of our reports on that. Ukraine's Western-backed leader, Zelensky, has been really cozying up closely with Wall Street, offering hundreds of billions of dollars of state sell-offs and investments for Western capitalists who are getting very wealthy profiting off of buying up Ukraine. And Zelensky symbolically rang the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange, announcing that his country is open for business. He is quite literally selling his country to Western capitalists. We are defending freedom and... Zelensky's love letter to Western corporations. Property together will be able to start the difficult war of rebuilding Ukraine, our cities, our economy, our infrastructure. It is already clear that this will be the largest economic project of our time in Europe. It is obvious that American business can become the locomotive that will once again push forward global economic growth. We have already managed to attract attention and have cooperation with such giants of the international financial and investment world as BlackRock, JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs. Such American brands as Sterling or Westinghouse have already become part of our Ukrainian way. Your brilliant defense systems such as HIMARS or Bradley are already uniting our history of freedom with your enterprises. We are waiting for Patriots. We are looking closely at Abrams. Thousands of such examples are possible, and everyone can become a big business by working with Ukraine in all sectors, from weapons and defense to construction, from communication to agriculture, from transport to IT, from banks to medicine. And I believe that freedom must always win, and I invite you to work with us right now. So, it's very... NATO fights Russia to the last Ukrainian. It's concerning to see the cynicism of these Western governments that claim to support democracy and human rights while they are using Ukraine as a battering ram to try to wage a proxy war against Russia, fighting to the last Ukrainian. The average age of a Ukrainian soldier fighting on behalf of NATO on the front lines is now between 43 and 45. It is a horror show. I mean, it is so sad seeing this complete destruction of a nation, and yet the Western governments that keep expanding this war and pushing Ukrainians into the meat grinder on behalf of Western imperial hegemony, they are profiting. I mean, it is completely cynical and... Study foreign intervention is 100 times more likely in a country with oil. In 2015, academic experts in the West published a very interesting scholarly journal article that looked at the role of natural resources in armed conflicts around the world. They published an article that summarized their findings titled, "Fueling Conflict: The Role of Oil in Foreign Interventions." They noted that they found, quote, "statistical evidence that Central Intelligence Agency covert operations during the Cold War resulted in increased imports of United States goods from target countries, without the same holding true for exports," end quote. U.S. military assistance increased non-military bilateral trade flows with the recipient country, end quote. They also added, "We found that oil production and known oil reserves are central factors motivating third-party military interventions. More specifically, we demonstrated that the higher the quantities of oil produced and owned by a country at civil war, the higher the likelihood of third-party intervention."